On March 4th, 1995, a wounded New Orleans police officer lay bleeding on the floor of a restaurant. Standing over him was his own partner. She raised her weapon and finished what her accomplice had started. Then she walked out, drove away, and came back 20 minutes later in her patrol car, pretending to be the officer who'd arrived to help. The badge was never the thing that protected anyone that night. It was the thing that made her invisible. Antoinette Frank wanted to be a New Orleans police officer, badly enough to work around the one thing standing in her way. Her pre-employment psychological evaluation came back with a direct warning. The evaluator did not believe she was suitable for the job. Frank found her own psychologist, got a more favorable opinion, brought it back to the department, and they reconsidered. She graduated the academy in July 1993. By 1995, she was working the 7th District in New Orleans East and moonlighting off-duty security at a family-run Vietnamese restaurant called Kim An. Alongside her, working the same off-hours gig, was a fellow officer and her former partner on the force, Ronnie Williams. Williams was the one who assigned those off-duty security details among the officers. And at some point, he started cutting back Frank's hours there. Rumors were already circulating about her that she was shaking down drug dealers selling what she took. According to her own boyfriend, Frank was furious, and she wanted payback. On the night of March 3rd into the early hours of March 4th, Frank and her boyfriend, 18-year-old Rogers Lacaze, went to Kim An restaurant. Twice. The first visit looked ordinary. They ate, they left. But somewhere in that first visit, Frank managed to take something. A set of keys belonging to Cho Vu, one of the family members who worked there. Around 1:50 in the morning, Frank and Lacaze came back. This time, Frank was in uniform. She still had a badge. She still had a service weapon. And she'd just given herself a key to walk back in unnoticed. Officer Ronnie Williams was still there, working his own security shift. Lacaze fired the first shot, striking him. Frank, his one-time partner, stood over him as he lay wounded, and she shot him in the head. 2 of the restaurant owner's children were there that night too, 17-year-old Quang Vu and his sister, 24-year-old Ha Vu. Witnesses would later say they dropped to their knees, praying. They were shot anyway. Their sister Chow, the same woman whose keys had been taken hours earlier, survived by hiding inside a walk-in cooler. She would be the one to identify who did this. Frank and Lacaze fled the scene with cash from the restaurant. Then Frank did something almost no one expected. She got back in her patrol car and drove back to Kim An. By then, other officers were already responding to the calls. Frank walked back into the same restaurant she'd just left 3 bodies in, dressed as the officer who'd come to help. Cho Vu, still shaken, still hidden until moments before, looked at the officer standing in front of her, and she recognized her. Frank was arrested. She later confessed. Frank and Lacaze were tried separately later that year. In Frank's trial, the jury didn't need long, 22 minutes. That's how long it took them to find her guilty on 3 counts of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to death in 1995. In 2007, the Louisiana Supreme Court upheld it. Rogers Lacaze's sentence took a different path. In 2015, his death sentence was vacated, and he was resentenced to life in prison. Antoinette Frank's was not. She remains, to this day, the only woman on Louisiana's death row. Ronnie Williams left behind a wife and 2 young sons. One of them had been born just a week before his father was killed. In 2023, Frank's bid for clemency went before Louisiana's pardon board. The vote came back split, 2-2, denied. Her legal team has continued fighting since, arguing she didn't receive an adequate defense at trial. The state insists she has exhausted every option left to her. 3 decades later, the appeals continue. The sentence remains. Antoinette Frank wore a uniform built to make people trust her. She used that trust to walk back into a crime scene she'd created and very nearly walked back out of it clean. It wasn't forensics that caught her. It was a woman who'd hidden in a cooler, looking her killer in the eye and refusing to look away.